We may be working out the kinks in the system. If you notice anything odd, chalk it up to that. This is Vaguely Scientific. I am mostly Derek, with some bits of fictional people thrown in. And joining me, as always, is the head, torso, and left arm of Jim. Hi, Jim.
Most of it.
most of Jim. Yay. We are still working on assembling all of our old friends. So for now, we've managed to program this pinball machine to sound like Mark. Hi, Mark.
Tilt. Do they shout tilt?
I really got to read these ahead of time.
I don't know why.
I didn't even have the right tab open.
Oh, well, it was more organic then.
Yeah.
This is the show where listeners send in questions to hear our vaguely scientific answers, and we'll get right to those questions after a healthy bit of procrastination. So first, it's time for the fun science fact of the day. Jim?
Okay. So when iron, or I guess ferrous oxide, in the pages of old books is exposed to humidity, the page will develop brown spots. This is called foxing, which comes from ferrous oxide.
Neat.
I think it's called foxing. That's kind of cute.
It's called fox because it's like F-E-O, right?
Yeah.
So, ferrous ox. Fox.
I think that's really cool. I love like the look and feel of really old books. I think that's a really cool fact.
Yeah.
Definitely unique. Something you don't see anymore. Your Kindle does not rust when you pull up a Stephen King book and leave it open for...
Yeah, it shouldn't.
Well, yeah, it shouldn't.
Yeah, I thought that was cool, and there's a specific word for it. Sometimes it's mold, though. You want to make sure that it's just the iron in the pages and not mold. So with the fun science fact out of the way, perhaps we should move on to our first question for this week.
Mm-hmm.
So question 1 this week: if you could assign fictional characters to prevent specific disasters throughout history, which characters would be the best to send to which disasters? An addendum to this question, the person who submitted it mentioned that they saw a post on the internet saying that the Titanic sinking could have been avoided if Spider-Man had been there, and they didn't know that Spider-Man would have been their first pick for the Titanic. And I kind of agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it depends on how watertight the webbing is, because maybe he could have patched up the holes in the boat.
I mean, that's fair.
Oh, I don't know why I didn't think of that.
There is a scene in, which one was it? I think it was the first Tom
I think it was
Holland.
Homecoming.
Was it Homecoming?
Yeah,
where there's like a boat that is split in half and he's like trying to net it back together. But I think Iron Man shows up to help.
Yeah. Yeah, that boat got bisected in the worst way that a boat can be bisected.
So you're in favor of the horizontal bisection?
I mean, yeah, because I mean, if you think about a boat being split like down the center, like a because there's a lot less surface area for water to go into those two halves. If you split it like down the middle, like long ways, then it's just gonna flounder like real fast. So
this entire episode is about to turn into which way is the correct way to be bisected.
There's a correct answer for everything.
Which way would you prefer?
And it's usually not long ways. Long ways is usually the worst way to be bisected, no matter what you're looking at. Like if you bisect a pencil, if you bisect it long ways, it is no longer useful. But if you bisect it like in half, then you have two functional pencils.
Then you have two functional. One of them doesn't have an eraser, though.
That's okay. It's still. I mean, golf pencils don't have erasers, and we don't complain about that.
Well, my argument for being bisected vertically as a person is that if you're bisected horizontally as a person, you could survive, and that would suck.
Yeah.
That's my argument.
Make it quick. If you're going to be
So it
bisected.
depends. Do you want to survive?
What if you're like Darth Maul and you get cool robot legs?
If I have the option to keep my legs, I'm
Want that.
going to pick that. I don't know. That's me.
Well, what if if you're bisected like through the middle of your tummy, then you have the option to just be legs and that's it.
I don't think I have that option, Jim. I don't think that's how it works.
If you can
We're
shift your
cephalized.
conscience into your legs.
Oh. So anyway, question 1 this week. If you could assign so I did the smart aleck in me is like, if you could assign fictional characters throughout history, I might say I wouldn't, because I don't want to alter the timeline.
Okay.
Specific disasters through history. That's me avoiding answering the question.
I was
As I
thinking
do.
about that, and I think that one of the things that came up when I was looking into superpowers and that sort of thing is I wonder if you could not alter history too badly if you stuck to things like weather. And I don't know to what extent Storm can really control weather. Like, can Storm dissipate a tornado?
Oh. Storm's one of the really high-powered X-Men.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, like,
She's
I
one of the
think
most
she
powerful, I think.
potentially can.
Because I'm thinking, like, what if Storm comes along and it's, April 26th, 1991, and you're in Andover, Kansas, and she just dissipates that tornado, and that trailer park is not decimated. That's the thing I was thinking about, like stopping weather disasters that don't necessarily kill a lot of people, but maybe they destroy a large amount of property. Because I think that Andover tornado killed 13 people, which is not too many in the grand scheme of things. So I don't think you're going to
Sure.
alter too many timelines.
So I think ultimately, as fun as this is, and as I'm open to continuing to talk about it, but I also think if we throw caution to the wind and ignore preserving any sort of history, that might be the spirit of the question. So I the first place I started
Was Batman.
was
That's where I started.
no, actually.
Really? Wow.
Very close.
That's funny because I did actually start with Batman.
Did you? Okay, I started with Superman.
You do yours because I already did one.
Well, I started with Superman for the specific reason that I limited the times I could use a specific hero to 1. Because there are a lot of events in history that I would be like, Superman could handle that.
Yeah.
And you don't need anyone else.
Yeah. Superman could stop the Titanic from sinking.
Superman could pick up the Titanic and carry
Fly
it
away
to
with
shore. And
Yeah.
yeah. So maybe it's not that I limited it to 1. It's just that I said I'm not going to use Superman.
Yeah, Superman could probably do all of them.
Superman could do all of them. And okay, so you both started with Batman.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So I was actually thinking of the JFK assassination.
Oh,
Ooh.
that's a good idea.
Yeah, because I'm thinking like, there was like some rumblings that something might happen, but they were like, it's probably nothing. It's probably just, rumors and a political figure is in town, so we're not going to worry too much about it. But Batman would have been tenacious, and he would have gone up into that building and judo chopped Lee Harvey Oswald in the neck.
And Robin would have taken out the second shooter.
Yeah.
Robin on the grassy knoll.
This is comic books. I mean, we have
Yeah, in comic books, there would have been a second shooter. You're right.
in comic books, Batman actually was busy with the second shooter. That's
I thought you were going to say Batman was the second shooter.
no, I wouldn't have said that.
Ugh.
Yeah, I know there wasn't a second shooter in all likelihood, but
But yeah, I'm thinking that really any like political assassination kind of thing, Batman would work really, really well. He may not have a 100% success rate, but he may have a high enough success rate that it would work out.
So I think Batman's assets in disaster mitigation are A, that he's a billionaire,
Mm-hmm.
and B, he's so smart and he can predict when things are going to happen. And plus he's being sent back in time, so he probably already knows what the disaster is. Right? So he has foreknowledge.
Oh, if he's being interesting. I didn't even think about that.
I didn't either.
We are
actually.
sending these characters back in time, so they are armed with some kind of information.
Even if not, I think Batman would do well because
Yeah. I think in that case, Batman would have a 100% success rate.
Well, sure, because you have the
Yeah.
hindsight.
You know, you got to chuck a batarang at what's his name, Franz Ferdinand. No, wait, hold on. That's the Arch.
That's
Don't throw your batarang at him.
Duran.
No, who's the guy who shot
Lee
Franz
Harvey Oswald.
Ferdinand? No, it's not Lee
Wasn't
Harvey.
it Sir?
Oh, wait, what's
Sirhan?
Was it Sirhan?
Yes.
Sirhan? I thought Sirhan.
Or was that?
Wait,
Oh my goodness.
why don't any
I
of us
forget.
know this? Thanks a lot, world history in high school.
Gavrilo Princip.
Oh, that's a great name, is what
That's
that
a good
is. Yeah, he would have threw his batarang at Gavrilo Princip, and no one would have been the wiser that there was a whole thing about to happen. And then there would have been no World War One, at least not at that point.
And I think Batman, his money and his diplomacy skills as Bruce Wayne, I think he could have avoided World War One entirely. Batman would have redrawn the map, the Congress of Batman in Vienna.
Okay.
Well, I think he would have done that under the auspices of Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those are interchangeable. And we're talking about
Well,
them in
to
the third
us,
person.
yeah,
Yeah.
we don't want to let everyone in Europe know.
So I think you covered pretty much every hurricane with Storm.
Well, can Storm take out a whole hurricane? Because those are big.
I think she can.
Yeah.
It might be like physically taxing, but like I'm pretty sure she's one of the like high level characters. So like now let's look at someone like Weather Wizard, who is a Flash villain. I don't think he necessarily could without some like big, like huge bit of technology. I would send either Dr. Manhattan or Captain Atom or the Atomic Man to Chernobyl in 1986.
Oh, good idea.
Because you could just absorb all of that energy.
Actually, now that you mention it, I think that Dr. Manhattan would also be really good for just in general any kind of like nuclear accident that
Through Mile Island.
You know what I always thought was very interesting was I think it's somewhere off the coast of Georgia. A bomber accidentally lost a nuclear bomb and they never found it. I bet Dr. Manhattan could find it.
Easily. My standard for disasters is, of course, the Great Molasses Flood of 1919.
Yeah.
To fix that, I think, do we consider like waterbenders superheroes?
It says fictional characters.
That's true. Yeah, it doesn't even say they have to be heroes. Like you could send Fry from Futurama.
Where would you send Fry? What would he save?
Not his grandfather.
I'm reading about the Great Molasses Flood now.
Yeah, I want to know who you send to the flood.
There's also a famous butter flood I read about recently.
Ooh.
I can get behind both of these natural disasters.
It stank. It stank a lot.
Oh.
But if a waterbender were there, they could just send that butter onto thousands of pieces of toast that the government would bring in.
I guess they can bend butter.
Butterbender.
Butterbender. Better butter bender. Butter. Better butter bender. Better butter. I want to touch on.
Wait, I want to hear who you'd send to the molasses disaster.
Oh yeah, what did you have one for the molasses disaster?
Oh, same. I would send what are their names? Katara. From Avatar: The Last Airbender. Or Aang, the Avatar himself.
Yeah.
And can handle any of the things. I'm finding it interesting. So here's one that stumped me. So I don't actually have a specific person in mind for this, because there are some that are like specialized. Touching on the Titanic again, the first thing that comes to my mind is Aquaman. But I don't necessarily know that Aquaman is like actually necessary. I mean, he could rescue all the people, I suppose. But
yeah.
So anyway, so that's a possibly specialized person, and then there's like the Superman example of someone who could handle anything. So I have a specific one that I couldn't think of who was good for it, and that is the disappearance of Amelia Earhart.
Oh.
Which isn't like a natural disaster or historical disaster, but it is like a tragedy
Yeah.
and a mystery. So, like, I mean, I guess you could say maybe Batman, but presumably in the canon of DC Comics, Amelia Earhart was still a real person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. Like, we have since discovered a lead on to what happened to Amelia Earhart, but like, who could we have sent at the time to like rescue her before tragedy ensued?
I have another far overpowered choice.
Okay.
And that is the Doctor from Doctor Who.
Ooh.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I would in the 60 years that Doctor Who exists, he has to have met Amelia Earhart. There is no way. I've never looked into this, but I guarantee without even looking, that has to have happened.
It seems like a doctor thing to do.
Yeah. I'm going to Google it because I have to know.
Let's see.
Oh, that's right. He had a companion named Amelia. That makes it a little trickier.
There is no documented evidence or credible historical accounts to suggest that Doctor Who, a fictional character, this is not what I'm asking you.
Wait, what did you ask? What?
I asked, did the Doctor meet Amelia Earhart?
Did you ask it in like Chat GPT or something?
I did.
I mean, it's not wrong.
It's not.
Jeez, who programmed the AIs to be no fun? Man.
I'm surprised that people think that they're useful. I've played with them. I've never used them for anything that mattered, but I've like played with them, and they're just wrong about everything.
According to the TARDIS fandom wiki, apparently there are several instances where they've at least referenced meeting Amelia Earhart.
Okay.
There you go.
So there's not like a dedicated episode to it, but it's likely that they've met.
Yeah.
Write it up. Sell that script.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could.
What if you sent ChatGPT like a laptop that just ran ChatGPT back in time? Like like, what if you gave Winston Churchill ChatGPT? Like, here you go, buddy.
Winston Churchill was in Doctor Who. Not the actual Winston Churchill. He was the character of Winston Churchill.
So you're suggesting that ChatGPT is a character we're sending to one of these historical disasters?
Yes.
Is that
our only hope of
Our
something
only-
Oh
disaster.
no.
well, would they know how to use it? Okay, well, so it depends if it's from the future and has information from the future, because then it could be useful to look up like political maneuvers and stuff. But like, is there something you could use it for now to like somebody is attacking? I don't know. I can't think of a good example.
I wonder how up to date it is in things like war and strategy. Like, you give it to Alexander the Great and be like, how do you defeat the I don't know what stopped him. I know that he sort of stalled out at India. But like,
Yeah.
how do you defeat the Indian army? I guess you wouldn't call it that because that's not who they were at the time, but you know.
ChatGPT would be like, the Indian army is known for having war elephants that are this large.
And Alexander the Great would be like, well, in that case, I'm going home.
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave.
Yeah. Jeez. So the two ways of exploring this question, I think if we can send people back in time, then the possibilities for any scenario are almost infinite.
Yeah.
But if we're thinking of what fictional character would be like good to have in a specific scenario, like as opposed to sending them back in time but they were just there, like then I think the Batman answer is still on the table.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also like, there are certain things that happened and presumably they still happened in the fictional continuity. And you don't, I mean, like, I think Batman was probably interested in JFK.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So, like, I don't think he was able to do anything about it.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of weird when you think about it. Like, Batman has been around for about 80 years or so.
Something
And
like that.
a lot of history is to be fair. I mean, like, and we've talked about this before on this show where you have two different Batmans. You have like street level Batman and you have like Justice League Batman, and they are two very different situations.
Oh, sure. I mean, if you want to get more complicated, which I don't, you have several different kinds of Batman. Like, a lot depends on how the character is written, and a lot depends on the time period that the character was written. Because when the character was originally introduced, they were basically just a guy who went out and killed mobsters.
Yeah.
And that's an original Batman. And then there's the Adam West Batman, which is the best Batman.
Easily.
Well, that's true of Superman too, because I amend my earlier statement that Superman could handle anything, because if you went with the dawn of Superman, like the beginning of that character, he couldn't fly. He wasn't necessarily invincible. He was just like he was closer to Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Captain America would have been much use on the Titanic.
No. I didn't know that about Superman, that in the original run he was less superpowered.
Yeah, that's where the
Leaping
faster
tall
than a
buildings.
speeding bullet,
Yeah.
leaping tall
Oh.
buildings in a single bound. Why would you say that? He can obviously just fly. Well, he couldn't fly back then.
Right.
And then he got too powerful because they just started making up new powers all the time.
Mm-hmm. Power
And
creep.
then this power creep happened. Yeah.
What? Ah, boy. What could Captain America have done at the Titanic?
What could? I mean,
I
save people.
Yeah, I feel like he would be very good at directing folks to lifeboats.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the wrong war. I was going to say maybe that's how he gets frozen into a block of ice, but that predates Captain America a smidge.
In the Elseworld Captain America story where he wasn't in World War II, he was on the Titanic.
Yeah.
Well, it is true, Jim. I think one of the reasons a lot of people died on the Titanic was that some lifeboats were released early
Mhm.
and they were kind of half empty and stuff like that. I don't think that would have happened under Captain America's watch.
That's true.
I think they didn't have enough lifeboats because
That's also true, yeah.
They scoffed at the idea that it could possibly sink.
Yeah.
I remember.
It is profoundly, and this is not a new topic of discussion, but just the fact that they were so certain it could never sink, and then it sank immediately. And in a way that is so just like, it's fictional almost in a way. It's like, this is so ridiculous that no, it is a thing that happened, but it just sounds so ridiculous that it's true. Oh boy.
I mean, the success of the James Cameron movie, I don't know if this is still true because I haven't been in school for a long time, but like, I remember younger kids thinking that Titanic was a fictional movie, and they thought books about the Titanic were just based on the movie. Like, that's a thing that kids have thought in the past, and I wouldn't be surprised if they still do, because it's the movie of the Titanic is at least half of why people know about it.
I think it's a big part of its enduring culture.
Yeah, that is true, because I think a lot of people were interested in the Titanic, but then there's also, like, because of the movie, it's something that, like, people knew about it, but they didn't care about it, but then the movie kind of made them care about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking, like, people, you say Titanic and everyone knows what you're talking about, but, like, I hardly ever hear anybody say anything about the Lusitania.
That's true.
Yeah.
So, like, that's also a thing.
Well, James Cameron needs to get off his butt and make a movie about it.
I mean, he's just raking in the money from re-releasing the one. He doesn't need to do anymore. Calling you out, James Cameron.
That'll teach him. He listens to this show,
yeah.
I'm confident.
That'll show James Cameron that spurious claim I've made of him. 'Cause he definitely didn't make any other wildly successful movies.
No.
One and done.
One and done.
What is he known for? Battle Angel Alita? That was a popular manga and anime before the James Cameron came along, so he can't even claim that.
Yeah.
I actually really liked Battle Angel.
I've heard it was really good.
Yeah.
I liked that movie. I didn't like the ending, but I want to see the second one if they ever make it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would send James Cameron
to the Titanic.
to the Titanic.
He'd probably go.
He'd probably go. All right, James Cameron, you can go back in time to the Titanic, and that's as much as I can guarantee. Do you accept?
Well, here's the other thing is that if we send James Cameron back to the Titanic, to his credit, he did a lot of research about the Titanic.
Yeah, that's true.
So he would probably save the dang thing. He'd probably be like, here, you got to steer this course south. You got to avoid this place. And he'd probably like completely reroute the boat and avoid all of these dangers.
Yeah, but would they believe him back then? Because he would be suggesting it might sink.
Oh, boy, that's a good question.
That's a good question.
The other thing is he's not a fictional character.
He's not. Oh. Oh, right.
But our version of James Cameron that we've been making fun of for the last 3 minutes is kind of
that
fictional.
Is a fictional character.
Yeah, we have made a fictional parody of James Cameron.
Yeah.
James Cameron.
He's got a big chin in our version.
To be fair, that fictional James Cameron probably not as good of a choice to send back.
Well, no, because in our fictional James Cameron, we can say with certainty that they will believe him because he's our character.
Oh, that's fair. Okay. Yeah, he has the power to be believed by everyone.
Yeah. He's like a reverse Cassandra.
Yeah. All right, listeners, let us know what disasters are most interesting to you and what fictional characters might be relevant to them.
You know what might be a fun audience question submission drive challenge thing or something? I don't know. Would be having the audience send us in fictional disasters and we have to try to figure out what hero would bet. Or having the audience say, I'm going to assign you the Hulk. Which disaster would he be best suited for?
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
I didn't send the Hulk to any of them.
I can't think of one that would really be helpful. I spent a lot of time, actually. Maybe the two of you can crowdsource this for me right now. I don't know how to stop Krakatoa.
Oh, I don't remember specifically what happened at Krakatoa.
I mean, the whole dang island just exploded, basically.
It's similar to... I was looking at Pompeii.
Don't send the doctor there. He caused it.
Well, so send him there to just stand still and do nothing.
Take a day off.
Yeah. Well, he tried. He did.
Yeah, I didn't really know. I mean, even if you include the OP characters, like Superman's there. Superman can do a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But what's he gonna do to prevent? Like, he can't. Even if he goes and tries to like block the volcano from erupting, he can't physically block the whole thing. You know, so I don't know. How do you stop volcanoes?
Are there any X-Men that are like lava themed or something?
I think there's a guy named Magma or something, but I think you can just like shoot lava. I don't know. I might be making this up.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. I don't know the X-Men very well, to be fair.
Could like a powerful psychic like shift the tectonic plates back or something?
So I was thinking of going back to my Amelia Earhart question. I thought Professor Xavier could possibly find Amelia Earhart by using the Cerebro thing and going and searching for her. And, I don't know. Speaking of volcanoes, I have a question about volcanoes. I'm stalling while I open my show notes. And it is actually our second question for this week. What exactly does a volcanologist do? And the short answer is they study volcanoes.
Well, Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines volcanology as a branch of science that deals with volcanic phenomena. Plural. I've always wanted to do that.
Okay, I want to tell a little bit of a story about this question. It's not super long, but I met a guy who was in a production of Twelfth Night. in a park several years ago, and he was from England, and I had talked to him about doing a show with us, and I asked what he did, and he was a professor of volcanology.
Oh, dang.
And I was like, that's fascinating. Unfortunately, he ended up going back to England, and he never ended up doing a show with us. But since I met this person, I've been very curious to know. Now, this person was a professor, so presumably they taught volcanology. So that's one thing that a volcanologist can do is teach information about volcanoes. But he showed me a bunch of pictures that he had gone to somewhere in like Hawaii or that area to study a volcano. And I was like, what do you do you just go there and look at it? Like, what do you, like, what is so like you're a professional volcanologist. Just what is the day-to-day life of a professional volcanologist? This has just been fascinating to me for years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I finally read some things about it, but I just wanted to share that. Hopefully that gives some idea of how what seems like such a mundane question is so fascinating, because it's not something I'd ever thought of before.
Yeah. And I think that it's one of those things where people assume like, oh, volcanologists, they just sit in volcanoes all day. And it's so much more than that. That's also cool, though. Like, that's a neat thing to do. Not to undersell, like, sitting in a volcano and, like, I always liked watching, they go out into the volcanoes and they film and they do the documentaries and stuff. And one of the things that I love watching them do is basically they will take a hammer attached to a string and they will throw the hammer into the lava and then pull it back. And they will put the hammer into a bucket of cold water. And that's how they sample lava. And it's
my goodness.
That's what you have to do to get like the pristine lava sample that's not contaminated by like the rocks in the ground and stuff like that. You have to like take it and then immediately cool it off. And that's like the exciting part of being a volcanologist. That's not like the day-to-day, but I love watching them do that. It's very satisfying.
You said it was a hammer? Like,
I always see like hammers and pickaxes. I don't know if that's like like if it really is. It's always like some kind of tool with a lot of surface area.
Is it a specific tool for measuring lava, or they just find some random? Because the way you described it, I'm picturing just like they have a claw hammer and they're like, well, let's chuck this in.
To me, it always looks just like a hammer. So I don't know if it's a specific tool. All the volcanologists that listen to this show, you can write in and tell me.
I like the idea that it's just like, well, we can't go in there. It's hot.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do we have? Just throw that thing in there.
I mean, maybe that's how it started.
So I looked up, the first thing that I thought of is maybe they want to monitor volcanoes, like to see if a volcano is likely to erupt, because I didn't actually know how much of a hold we had on volcanic eruptions. And it seemed as though we do kind of still have to like actively monitor them to predict if they're going to cause a problem. So that's, I would say, a very important job that volcanologists do.
Yeah, we're talking about how could a superhero or a fictional character prevent Krakatoa, and that's kind of, volcanologists are like that. It requires years and years of study and gathering data and looking at trends, and that kind of predictive power is like a superpower almost. Nobody else can do that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people give volcanologists sort of like a not a bad rap. That's not a good way of describing it. But it's like, I feel like people underestimate volcanologists because it's like, well, they're just looking at rocks. Anyone can do that. But it's like, you can't just do that. You can't go outside and look like, I went to school for science, but it was not geology or volcanology. Like I know biology. I can do some of that. But I can't go outside and tell you what a rock is. And very important to know what's going on inside of a volcano, because you have many different kinds of volcanoes. You have loads of different kinds of lava. And a volcanologist has to do a lot of years of school to get to the point where they can do those kinds of things and understand, like, is this volcano prone to lava, or is it prone to just exploding violently, like Krakatoa, for instance?
I was reading they also tend to collaborate with geophysicists and chemists and geologists, and apparently they are in contact with like emergency responders in communities near enough to volcanoes that like
It's really neat.
because they're the experts on what to prepare for.
Mhm.
So like I didn't think of that either.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
What I saw, as far as like the tools of the trade, what's really interesting to me is that a lot of what volcanologists seem to do is
Chuck hammers and lava.
chuck hammers in lava all day.
That's headcanon now.
Where do they get all those hammers?
Where do they get all those hammers?
The hammer industry is just obviously funding this
I'm
conspiracy.
picturing what are they called? The Hammer Brothers from
Yeah.
from Mario sitting in the castle throwing hammers into the lava.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
The
That's
Hammer
what
Brothers were actually
volcanologists.
very famously volcanologists. They just never
Yeah.
talk about it in the show or in the game.
Well,
Yeah.
in the same way that Mario was a plumber.
Yeah, they never talk about that in the game. In the show, they do.
Yeah, that's just not relevant to the game.
Yeah.
But that's what they're doing off screen.
hmm
I'm way more interested in the Hammer Brothers now. The next time I see those guys, I'm gonna think scientists.
They single-handedly keep
scientists.
Home Depot in business. Single-hammerly keep Home Depot.
Oh my good.
Oh, now I'm angry. Mark, I think we interrupted you several
No,
times.
that's fine. um, I don't know how true this is, but I found somewhere online that a lot of volcanologists may consider Pliny the Younger to be the first volcanologist. This was in the 70s AD or CE, and he's famous for writing a letter about his uncle Pliny the Elder, who died in Pompeii. And his
Oh.
descriptions
right.
of how he died, like the gas, that's what they think. That's it. They think that's how he died, was he inhaled toxic fumes, which caused him to go unconscious.
Uh-huh.
So like this guy in the 70s AD was describing all of these minute details about how the eruption happened, and there was this lava flow, and there was this gas, and the sky did this, like all of these details. You know, someone in the 70s AD did that, and those details, that method is kind of still what volcanology seems to be about. It's about putting the pieces of this puzzle together, all these little aspects about volcanoes that we don't usually think of.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I'm reading in brief. It's describing the eruption visually and how much of an impact it had, and kind of measuring the size of it. And that's like the beginning of volcanology. That's really interesting because it just starts with observing what you can see, right? And then that's what they had then.
You're talking about the tools that volcanologists have available today, but based on what I was reading, I was really impressed by the fact that the tools have improved, but the human machine has remained the same, right? Like if you gave Pliny the Younger a satellite, you know, he may have come to the same types of conclusions that a volcanologist today might come up with, because he would have all that data.
Yeah, the availability of information is definitely going to change.
Yeah.
If we could go, that's why you can't bring advanced technology to a primitive civilization.
Don't give any of the Plinies anything that could be used.
If you meet a guy named Pliny,
Yeah.
you just keep your mouth shut.
And if he's elder, then don't even talk to him. Just walk past.
Just walk away. Just say no to Pliny.
That's so cool, though, because, I mean, you always, especially, the thing that I think makes it even cooler, though, is just the fact that it is Pompeii, which is just arguably one of the most famous volcanic eruptions ever.
Yeah. That's kind of, I guess, so many people died there and so much was written about it at the time.
Well, and we have physical evidence of the aftermath of it.
Yeah.
True.
Kind of why that's so important, like historically.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that I think is kind of neat about volcanologists is also the fact that they can teach, that they
Sure.
can, learn all these things and then impart them onto the next generation of volcanologists or geologists or whoever, needs to learn these important pieces of information. Because I think it's really fun. Like as an educator, I think it's really fun to give people the aha moment of like understanding that kind of stuff. And volcanoes are just rad, big phenomena like volcanoes and weather and tornadoes. And, those are things that people like to hear about. So I think that's kind of an exciting thing to teach. You could teach like economics, but it's not going to be fun.
I mean, it's definitely one of the good like gateway sciences, I think.
Yeah.
Because like I remember when I was in grade school and I was like, I don't like no science. All it is predicting the weather and mixing chemicals together. And somebody was like, big lava erupting from the ground and also dinosaurs. Those are the two big ones that like get kids thinking, oh, this is science. And then the more you learn about them, the more you learn that those other ones are interesting too. It's kind of like math. It's kind of like how I think math is interesting now, but it is taught the wrong way in school. Like, that's what I think.
I think with math, it's tricky because to understand the interesting math, you have to go through the boring math.
That's true. You got to learn. Nobody wants to do the fundamentals.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's true of
science too.
Boy.
I mean,
yeah.
It's true of science. It's true of art. It's the fundamental, because I don't think until you understand why you're learning the fundamentals, it just seems like I want to do the interesting stuff.
Yeah.
And it isn't until you do the interesting stuff the incorrect way that you realize, oh, those fundamentals sure would have helped.
And that's the thing about science that I think a lot of people, I should say, it's the thing about science that makes it so accessible is that the fundamentals can also be pretty fun, which you put the fun in fundamentals. I said it. I wasn't going to because it didn't occur to me until it came out of my mouth.
Dragged it out of him.
Yeah. But like with like elementary age science, you can play with magnets. There are like planets in general. You just look at a picture of a planet. It's like, that's a planet. That's just cool, But with math, you got to go through algebra to get to the trig, and that's
that's a really good point. Aside from the fact that I don't care as much about planets because space is boring. But
wow,
all right. Well, then how about
my
there's a
goodness.
jellyfish? Look at a picture of a jellyfish.
I do like animals. But no, I think that's a good point because you said magnets, and I'm thinking one of the most basic introductions to any kind of science are things that kids can look at, and you don't need to know how to do science, quote unquote, to watch magnets or to look at fire is a very simple understanding. And then, you look at fire and you're like, how does that work? Oh, it's this, you create this particular fire by striking a thing against another thing. And that seems boring, but you know that you're going to get the fire out of it.
Yeah. And then the thing about science is that it has a very low barrier to entry, and then it gets progressively more complex until you get to like volcanologists. And then you integrate a lot of the math and a lot of the like literature comprehension and things like that. So science is a weird mishmash of different things. In a good way.
What I think is interesting about that, I feel like the human brain is, my opinion, is built to learn based off of our environment. And the way that we interact with our environment, I think as a species. If you watch a baby, that's how babies will learn through their senses, right? How does this thing taste? They want to stick everything in their mouths because that's the only way that they're gonna learn. So I think that makes abstract math kind of difficult because you can imagine
you can't stick a polynomial in your mouth.
Yeah, you can't. No Syntankos.
You don't know where they've been. That's a bad idea.
Yeah.
But you imagine like an ancient Greek like measuring where the sun sets every day, and noting those times to determine the tilt of the earth or whatever, what have you. That's based on a physical phenomena that they experience, and then the math is kind of created almost to explain that, I guess. Yeah, I was never very good at math either.
And even if you bring it back to Pliny the Younger, the thing that he took away from that was just observational. He didn't go and like,
Yeah.
test different materials and see what they were made out of. He just watched this thing happen and took notes about it. And it was super critical that he did this. We learned a lot about what happened because of this, but I think that's so cool.
That's what I think is interesting, jumping back to when I hand waved an expression away, to do science with air quotes. Because to do science, like you're talking about analysis and mathematical explanations of things and like cause and effect and that type of stuff, but that's all reaction. Like that's all to expand on it, but to quote unquote do science, what you were describing a child doing just by observing the environment with their senses, like we are able to do that as soon as we are conscious and we start to put things together. We are also able to process more when we grow up, but like the fundamental measurement taking is still just our senses, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah. It's amazing how much it grows from there. We have, I don't know, maybe this is oversimplifying it, but yeah, you have a baby sticking like Lego in their mouth and realizing like, oh, that's gross. And you can extrapolate on that to get to a volcanologist measuring, different layers of sediment to determine how often a volcano erupted in the past.
A volcanologist chucking a hammer into a volcano and saying, oh,
yeah,
that's hot.
I don't know why that reminded me of all the times where the doctor from Doctor Who has just put things in his mouth that shouldn't be there.
He's a scientist.
Yeah, he just stuck his finger in the ground and then licked it. And it's like, and that told him what planet he was on, to be fair. But it's also like, I don't know that you should do that.
You know what that makes me think of is all those
As a baby
procedural crime shows where they like put cocaine on their finger and like taste it.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, who's gonna do that's a terrible idea.
Yeah. Not only is it cocaine, but also what's in the cocaine? What's it laced with?
Yeah, you don't know. Like they're like, yeah, that's pure. And I'm like, do you do cocaine? Is that what you're admitting to right now? You're a vice cop. Like
all the vice cops do cocaine. Have you ever watched Miami Vice?
That's the initiation. They have to test it.
How pure is this?
So I know there's a thing that some cops do where like they have to be pepper sprayed because they're not like you have to know what it feels like to before you're allowed to do it to someone else. But like that does not apply to cocaine.
You don't know that.
I don't know that. I never went to police academy. I don't know.
I thought you were going to ask if volcanologists have an equivalent where I don't know what it is.
They have to stick their finger in lava and then taste it
to see what it feels like before you can
throw
use
the hammer.
Before you can use the hammer.
Before you throw the hammer, now you know what the hammer has to experience.
You respect your instruments, young volcanologist.
I am confident that there are other things volcanologists do when they're standing next to lava, but that is the one thing we're going to harp on.
Just the way you phrased it, and now it's in my head. Oh, man.
I'm going to find a video of them doing this and put it in the show notes, and hopefully the video will explain further what it is they're actually doing, and maybe talk about the hammer. I don't know.
That's fair. I mean, so in a sense, this is another point I wanted to make, but I feel like the ship has sailed at this point. But in a sense, volcanology seems to be similar to meteorology in that there's a lot of hard facts that we do understand, but we still have to collect data because the subject is always changing. So like we still need meteorologists to interpret current weather patterns, even though we understand how weather works. And that's kind of similar to studying volcanoes. Like we know how they work, but they keep doing stuff and you need to keep watching them to see what they're doing.
Yeah. And the thing about volcanology and really just studying volcanoes in general is that they are somehow less predictable than weather. And and I think that volcanologists get a bad rap in that sense that like, oh, you didn't predict when this volcano is going to erupt. Well, you can't. It is something that maybe we can't do as a species. Maybe it's impossible to do because the timing and all of the factors could just be beyond calculating. And I think it's a shame that, sometimes volcanologists get in trouble. It's like, well, why didn't you predict that the volcano was going to do this? Well, we can't. We have guesses. We can say, like, evacuate the area around Mount St. Helens because it could explode. And they did, actually, to their credit. Like, a lot of people evacuated, and they did save lives, but you couldn't know for sure. And there's really no way to know for sure until it actually happens.
When I was doing my research, you were comparing volcanologists to meteorologists, and I think that's a great comparison.
Okay.
It's like you're saying, both of them have to build up this data that they can use to make predictions based on past trends. But like you said, the subject is always changing. It reminded me of a doctor, like an Earth doctor. They know the symptoms. They know.
As opposed to like Doctor Who?
As opposed to Doctor Who.
An Earth doctor.
An Earth doctor.
Okay.
Rock doctor.
A physician.
Yeah. They got to go to the site of the wound, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that's true because medicine is not a constant, right? There's going to be all these different variables, so you still need somebody to like observe it. Because if there were just, as much as I would love this, if there were just some pill that was like, we know exactly how the human body works, and if you take this pill, it makes the human body work perfectly, I'd be like, great. But that's not how things work.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's the pill that you planted in the ground, and it prevents all the volcanoes from erupting into your house. I was like, great, give me that.
I mean, depending on where you are, you could definitely sell that to people because, like, if you're in Maine, you could easily sell that and it would work 100% of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. I don't see any tigers around, do you?
Yeah.
One last thing. One more thing. I think the coolest tool I read about that volcanologists have access to now are
hammers.
Geophysics. I think hammers. They have these satellites that the way that gravity interacts on different materials in the ground, depending on how far close they are to the core, and then when those materials shift further up closer to the surface, they can actually use satellites to analyze where those materials are shifting based on the effect that gravity is having on them. And I just thought that was so cool that they can monitor.
That is cool.
Yeah. Well, Jim mentioned we may not be able to, and I'm like, we just don't know how to approach it yet.
Yeah.
That's a huge stride.
With something like that, I could see us someday being able to. That's cool.
Yeah.
With current technology, we need something that is completely different than current technology. That's really cool. I like technology sometimes when it's not mine and I don't have to pay for it.
It's not an Ethernet cord.
It's not an Ethernet cord. I hate Ethernet cords. So listeners, let us know this week. This is, real easy. Which fictional characters would be the best at dealing with volcanoes?
Yeah, we never did answer that one.
So we put it to you, the listener. Anyway, Jim, do we have any listener mail this week?
No.
No.
Wow.
We got some. I'm just not going to read any because instead, we actually got a submission, and we have a couple of these, I think, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we do.
We have a couple of these. A while back, we had talked about building our own Pokemon gyms, and we actually talked about this in an episode, I don't know, like a year or more ago. But it sort of came back into our Discord chat because we did 2 Pokemon questions back to back. And so Justin developed his own Pokemon gym and sent it over to us. So in lieu of listener mail, we're going to do this week because it's really, really cool. So Justin's theme is a haunted mansion. And so the way that it's set up, there are challenges. The gym has a facade of a haunted house. Instead of trainers, there are triggers that activate Pokemon in the room for you to battle. Each room has a variety of ghost Pokemon that look like inanimate objects. As the challenger enters the room, they will need to face all the Pokemon in that room to gain a clue. Once all the rooms in the mansion are cleared of ghosts, the challenger will have a riddle that they need to solve to enter the main gym. The challenger will follow the clues to the library where they will pull on a hard copy of The Haunting of Hill House. When they do, a secret spiral staircase will descend from the middle of the library, and they will walk down, down, down into the battlefield. So here are a list of the rooms that you will have to battle the ghosts in. So you have outside of the front door. The front of the mansion is decorated with a variety of jack-o'-lanterns, gourds, and squash. Upon turning the doorknob to the entrance, one of the gourds springs to life and attacks. It's a pumpkaboo, which is quietly waiting near the door and springs to life as you reach for the door handle. In the conservatory, it's 30 degrees warmer than the rest of the house. There are trees, flowering plants, and vines that cover every inch. As the trainer peruses the various flora, they may notice that one of the trees seems to shift in places over time. When they go to investigate, the tree reveals itself to attack, and it is a trevenant. Next up is the dining room. In the middle of the dining room, there's a large rectangular table with a red runner trailing down the middle. Chandeliers hang from the ceiling, and 4 candelabras adorn the runner. Places are set on the table, they're preparing for dinner. When the trainer gets to the head of the table, the middle candle in each candelabra jumps off the table and surrounds the trainer, and you have to fight 4 Litwick, and that'll be 2 double battles.
Ooh.
That sounds like it'd be kind of challenging, actually. Next up is the upper landing. It goes up to a 2nd floor. However, all the doors are boarded up and inaccessible. As the trainer comes back down the steps, they're ambushed in the main hall by what seems like a tea cart, and that is Sinistea, which is a fairly new Pokemon, I believe.
I don't know that one.
Yeah. Next up is the kitchen. The kitchen is surprisingly lively, with soups, stews, and other dishes being created seemingly out of thin air by some ghostly manifestations that no one can see. They largely seem to ignore the trainer except for a pair of, are those swords? Chopping vegetables at the end of the counter. And so that becomes Duo Blade, which will attack the trainer when they're about halfway down through the kitchen. I really love Duo Blade and Aegislash. I had those in my party in whatever generation that was.
Yeah, they are super cool.
And then finally, we have the library, which is a large room with intricate wooden design that forms the shape of a circle in the middle. The walls are lined from wall to wall with books, and in between there are artifacts from around the world. When the trainer walks in, there are 2 Pokemon hiding in the shelves that jump out to challenge the trainer. First, we have Confagrius, which looks like a sarcophagus in the corner of the room. And then there is an Alolan Marowak, which is asleep. The skull is laying on the shelf with the body cleverly hidden behind, and it wakes up after you beat the Confagrius. And so that brings us to the gym leader. As the ghost gym, each Pokemon will share a ghost type. In an attempt to try to have a well-rounded team, each Pokemon has a second type. So we have Delmise, which is ghost and grass. Justin says, I just really like this Pokemon. I think he looks cool. We have Aegislash, which is steel and ghost. Since the player fights a Duo Blade to get here, it seems appropriate. Next is Frostlass, which is ice and ghost. The ghost of a woman who died in the mountains. She haunts the mansion. Next up is Houndstone, which is from the most recent generation as of recording. Every mansion needs a dog. Next is Gengar, which is ghost and poison. Just a classic, it says in the notes here. Yeah. And then finally, Chandelure, which is ghost and fire. And that's classic mansion lighting, it says.
Oh, yeah.
Gengar, the 2nd best Pokemon.
Second best.
The best one is Haunter, is my favorite.
Fair.
I am as I've said a million times, not super well versed in the later generation of Pokemon, and by later I mean all but the first. But I have always seemed to gravitate toward the ghost Pokemon, so I enjoyed this.
Yeah, I love the theme. I think it's great.
Yeah, it makes great use of a lot of Pokemon get a bad rap. Rotom, who can turn into like a washer or a fan. But I love all of the like everyday object haunted ghost Pokemon. I think they're really quirky and cute.
I love the T ones. There's a couple T ones now, because I think in the DLC for Scarlet and Violet they made like some matcha themed Pokemon.
I looked up the one that was the teacup when you read it, and I was like, oh, that's it, because it's like a little teacup. Looks like Chip from Beauty and the Beast.
Oh yeah,
yeah. In the back of my head, I heard a specific person I know just saying, it's just a teacup. And I'm like, that's what's great about it.
Yeah. I do think ghost Pokemon have some of the most creative designs, like a chandelier. That's cool.
Yeah, he is cool.
I like Trevenant, or what's the earlier form of Trevenant?
Oh, Phantump.
I like that one a lot. It's very cute.
So no listener mail, but if you have listener mail, then feel free to send those over at feedback@vaguelyscientific.com. You can comment on our blog. You can like us on Facebook. You can tweet at vaguelysci. And if you have a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, please email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. If you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and all the other great places that cool podcasts like to hang out. And subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out, and so does telling your friends.
Especially if they are volcanologists, because we'd love to talk to them.
Yes. Our vaguely musical intro was composed by Anthony Pizzelli. And don't forget to check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. You know, we talked a lot about chandeliers. You can't get a chandelier on there, but you can definitely get something to hang from your chandelier.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Don't hang a skateboard from your chandelier.
Get a skateboard, though.
Yeah.
It's going to be winter here in America.
Yeah, prime skateboarding weather.
Well, if you take the wheels off, it's a snowboard.
Well, there you go.
When do they make snowboards on Threadless? I'm going to email Threadless.
Well, thank you to Mark for being our guest this week.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always fun. For Vaguely Scientific, I am Derek.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Mark.
Thanks for listening. Now get out of here. You bother me.
Toodaloo, everyone.
Oh boy.
You know, they shut Miss Cleo down for that.
Is that why?
I don't know.
I just got sued for fraud is what happened.
Probably a lot of people complained about Miss Cleo. I don't know.
Yeah. Call her now for your free reading.
Yeah. That wasn't her real voice either.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
What?
It was a character she was doing.
Oh.
She wasn't even psychic.
What?
She wasn't even psychic.
I've been lied to by Miss Cleo.
Volcanologists are not equivalent to telephone psychics. That's the
No.
disclaimer I'm going to make sure we include in this episode.